Yeah, and it looks like someone had, I don't know if it's a Built Bar or if there's some type of energy drink or something going on at Lone Depot Field, but whatever it is,
Yes.
Marcel Ozuna had a bite of it and said, I'm about to go
Woo,
all
woo.
because
Come
this
on
is a
now.
guy who has 10 hits on the season and two home runs on the season. A third of his hits came in that game last night. About a half of his hits came in the series, and
Right.
both his home runs have come in
Oh
that game last
gosh.
night. Now, granted, this is
Yeah.
a familiar space to him, right? But
Yep.
to give him a little credit, he's been slowly tinking it and warming up to get to the point of a grand slam last night, and then coming back with a home run in an absolute mauling of the Marlins that the Braves did 14-6 again. 6 home runs, 7 runs in one inning. Just crazy, crazy. But there are two guys actually that we talked about. Well, so we'll talk about Marcell Ozuna. There's one guy that we talked about yesterday that I just want to mention really quickly before we go into conversation about Ozuna, and that's Austin Riley. We were just saying
Yes.
yesterday that he'd been quiet for a
Yeah.
couple of weeks, and all of a sudden, lo and behold, he smacks the heck out of a ball last night. So it was really
Yeah.
good to kind of see him make that kind of contact, if you will. But Ozuna, it's like, okay, good. Keep this up because you know what this is? This is like a showcase
Yes.
introducing who Marcel Ozuna could be if you would like to take him. So, is it now time for Alex Anthopoulos to start accepting those calls for Marcel Ozuna?
I think he should make them. I'll take a
He could
a
make
step
them, yeah.
further. Yeah, make those phone calls and see what's going on and gouge interest. Because here's the thing: we know that Marcel Ozuna is a hot and cold type of guy, right? You know, and more so cold for
Yeah.
ever
The
since he's
last two
been
and a half
back.
years.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Like he's been very, very cold. So if this is the beginning of what I think it could be, because like he had a zero in front of his batting average, and now he's over one,
Yeah.
over 100. So
Bless his heart.
that's progress.
It is. It
Bless
is.
his little heart. So if this is the beginning of what we're going to see, not saying that he's going to hit 2 home runs for every time Brian Snicker runs him out of there, but I do believe that Marcel Ozuna is the type of guy that is starting to get his confidence. If he has his confidence, he's going to play well because he's talked about how he understands why the fans are treating him the way they are, as far as from the booing and all that stuff. He listens to that stuff. He understands it. He's a human being, so I get it. So and for him to have the experience of seeing that ball fly off the bat, fly out of the yard two times, twice last night, and be able to get on base and score runs and everything like that, and get that zero off in front of his batting average. But a lot of people been dwelling on that. I know. Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen y'all tweets. I know how y'all get that. I know the vitriol that y'all have for Marcel Ozuna. I understand it. But I think that as we go along in these next few games, keep an eye on Marcel Ozuna, because if the dude starts to get hot, Alex Anthopoulos is a smart dude. I wouldn't be surprised if he already gouged interest, T, because that's just how he thinks. If this dude catches fire, I promise you, he will be up out of here. Because as the Braves get healthy, I think that you have Travis d'Arnaud come back. I don't want to see Sean Murphy come out of that cleanup spot, regardless of whether he's catching or DHing. I want him to stay exactly right where he is. And then with Ozzy Albies doing his thing in that 5-hole, yeah, I like what I'm seeing right now with this lineup without Ozuna in there. So the better he can play, the more Alex Anthopoulos need to start making them phone calls, because if this dude goes on a run in the next 7 or 8 games, man, make it happen, Captain.
Yeah, and Travis d'Arnaud was really good in that DH role before he went
Yes,
down for
absolutely.
injury. So him coming back, slowly making that progress, if you will, it does kind of
Let
make
me add to that to you
sense.
too. Can I add to that? With him being in that DH role, there's a less chance of him, having another, contact or a collision with the player, because we know these concussions he's been struggling with. He's talked about how he's been struggling with this concussion piece, because there's no timetable on this thing, because there are so many things with the symptoms and with what teams are doing nowadays to make sure these guys are really okay when they come back. Like, he has to go through that process. He talks about how difficult that's been. So him just standing at the plate, hitting the rock, and if he can hit that mug out of the park every time and not have to worry about running into nobody, hey, the more that'll be great.
Indeed. And yeah, it's one of those situations where there are some back and forth, up and down, in and out. And we saw it last night. Had a little scare. The good news is it was just a scare with Michael Harris II, where he's running to first base and he literally just trips over the bag for all intents and purposes. And so he was pulled from the game as a precaution for him. But of course, not before he said bye-bye with the ball. So we appreciate the fact that he was still doing MH2 things before he was pulled from the game as a precaution. Unfortunately, not so much of luck with Kyle Wright. He is going back to the IL, the 15-day IL at a minimum. So that'll definitely mean at least one start. He's going to be gone, maybe even 2 starts as well. It's one of those things where he looked like his mechanics were off, but it was kind of tough to tell exactly what it was initially. And then about that 3rd inning, you see the pitching coach come in, then you see Snit come in, and he was determined. Like, Kyle Wright was going to try to hang in there, right? But Snit was like, what are you doing? Like, why am I here? A rhetorical question, of course. And then he basically tells him, you're not going to pull yourself, so I'm going to go ahead and do it for you. And everything was fine from there. Braves went on to do their thing. And of course, in putting him on the IL, they decide between the guys we talked about just yesterday, Dylan Dodd and Jared Schuster, they decided to bring Dylan Dodd up for the series finale. And side note, not to talk about it, but I'm going to have to make a side note. So grateful it's not a businessman special. It's a 4:10 first pitch. Braves might actually sweep this thing. It's not a 12 o'clock pitch, not a noon, not a 1 o'clock first pitch. Braves might actually win today. But whatever they do in this next 15 days, they're going to have to do it without Kyle Wright. But are you concerned about this from a long-term standpoint, or are you okay because there's confidence to bring Dylan Dodd back? And by virtue of what Bryce Elder was able to do, going 7 innings, that rested your bullpen, so that if you have to pitch a bullpen game, the backside of this game, you still feel comfortable that you've got pieces in place and a strategy to be okay should Kyle Wright actually take a little bit longer than expected.
2 things, though. The as far as the long-term concerns, yeah, I'm concerned because, like, he was dealing with this coming into spring training. Yeah. He got the cortisone shot in his right shoulder, and then right shoulder. And so, and he was talking about how it wasn't necessarily in the shoulder. It was kind of more so on his back part of that shoulder. And I'm just like, that's not good. And then when you immediately put him on a 15-day diet, IL, because a lot of times when you go through this process, if it's a matter of, hey, let's go get some imaging first, let's go do that, and then of course they went through all that process, but when they immediately put them on like that's never a good sign in my eyes. So I think that they put him on IL to further evaluate to see like what's really going on, and I hope within the next couple of days we don't get any bad news. So yeah, I am long-term concern as far as that. And also, I'm not interested in no bullpen games right now, T. Like, that's just me. Like, and given where the bullpen is and Colin McHugh's starting to come around, my guy, the snipers.
You mean AJ Minter? The rest of the bullpen is fine. AJ Minter is the problem.
And low leverage Kirby, I want to keep low leverage Kirby in low leverage situations. You know what I'm saying? So those are what the Braves have to work with right now. And I think right now, if those guys can stay in those roles, the better I feel watching Braves games. So I think overall I am a little concerned with I feel like in the next 72 hours, we'll be able to understand like if it's anything that can come further from that 15-day IL designation. But hopefully it just remains that, because a 21-game winner is a 21-game winner, T, like at the end of the day.
Yeah, here's why I'm not concerned, or as concerned as maybe you are. I don't want to say not concerned, but just maybe not as concerned. So when I said bullpen game, meaning the backside of that, because I do expect Dylan Dodd to at least take him through 5 innings, but you may need the bullpen to come through on 4 innings, and I think they'll be quite fine because they had that rest thanks to Bryce Elder. When I think about what Alex Anthopoulos can do, if we're having this situation come up twice for Kyle Wright, and we've only gone through about 30 games, if you will. That gives Alex Anthopoulos a lot of runway to go out there and get somebody. And we've seen him be able to do that with the proper amount of time. So that's why I feel like, okay, well, not that I want him to go back on the IL for the same thing that was ailing him before.
Right.
But if we're going to have this happen, let's have this happen on the front side of the season, because
Yeah.
Alex
That's fair.
Anthopoulos can then go work the phones to try to get somebody to come in and make sure that he's got a person who is going to be viable to be a part of that rotation. So I think it might just be one of those timing is everything situations that make me feel like, okay, if anybody, if we can trust anyone to kind of mitigate this or navigate this, then it would be him. And I heard something interesting that Grant McCauley said today, our guy who's, of course, locked on Braves. And he had mentioned on 92.9 The Game about Mike Soroka. And he said he was still comfortable with the fact that, yeah, Mike Soroka had a not so good outing the last time he was out.
Oh,
But
yeah.
the good news is that the Braves must still feel confident enough not to have to rush him back. But he still feels like at some point we're going to be able to see him, and we're going to see him to be effective here in the majors. But he likes the fact that, hey, they're not rushing Soroka. So I said, okay, you kind of put those three pieces together. Makes me a little less concerned about what's going to happen. But if you have a concern, every day is let us know. What are your thoughts when you heard the news last night that Kyle Wright had to exit the game in the third inning and that he's going to be on the 15-day IL? Did that make you concerned? Let us know. Or if you guys think for some reason that despite what Jarvis and I have said about the NFC South, that somehow the Falcons are not the favorites and don't have an edge, drop that in the comments as well, or send us a DM. You see our Twitter handles, go ahead and send us a DM there as well, and keep watching. We really, really appreciate you guys checking us out on YouTube and, of course, wherever you download your podcast. But it wouldn't be fun if it was just a party with you guys and you didn't tell other people to come join the party.